Chapter 8, Lesson 6. This one's about least common denominator. So least means it's the smallest one. Common means to both or more things. Usually with common denominators, it's usually two fractions that we're going to talk about, and the denominator is the lower number on a fraction. So on page 583, they give us the fractions 2/3 and 5/6. Now you'll notice that the denominators are different from one another. So it says find least common denominator for these two fractions. Now, the smaller number is never the least common because you have a bigger number. So you need to make the denominators the same to figure out what the least common denominator is. So one strategy for doing that is to find, like we did in the last lesson, the lowest common multiple for those. So the first fraction, the denominator is a 3. The second one, it's a 6. So if I find some multiples of 3, 6, 9, 12, we'll go to 15 and stop. For 6, we'll do 6, 12, 18, 24. So if we look at these and we find the least common multiple for these is 6. And if we look at this, we know that 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6. So to turn this into a fraction that has 6 as the bottom, we need to multiply it by 2. 2 times 2 would be 4. 2 times 3 would be 6. And then this one would still be 5/6. Now, the other part that this lesson wants us to do is compare fractions. So whenever a math book asks you to compare anything, they're generally asking you, is it greater than, less than, or equal to? So now, since both denominators are the same, you just look at the upper number. So a 5 is bigger than a 4, which means that the 5/6 is greater than the 2/3, which when we multiplied by 2 became 4/6. So the true answer would be 2/3 is less than 5/6. Okay, that's the comparison that they're looking for on most of these. Okay, so to do that, we found the least common multiple of the denominators. We figured out what it was. We figured out how to get this one to be that. We multiplied both the bottom and the top by the same number. So here's 3 times 1, here's 3 times 2. So we multiplied them by 2 to turn them both into the denominator of 6. And then we determined 5 is larger than 4. And then we wrote it back down using the original value, 2/3 and 5/6. And we know that 5/6 is bigger. Now, there is always the danger that you're going to want to guess. On this assignment, you're not allowed to guess. You must always do the math to make 100% sure that your fraction is larger or smaller or equal to. Okay? And we're going to use the least common multiple method here to find out how to make the denominators the same. And that's what we'll do. So let's do a couple more. I'm going to turn the page here to 584. And we're going to look at number 1. It says compare 1/5 and 1/3. Okay, so I'm going to put this down here. And it says compare 1/5. Oops, that's a 5. 1/5 and 1/3. Okay, give them a little space here. 1/5 and 1/3. Now they're not the same, so I need to come out over here and I need to find the least common multiple of 3 and 5. So I'm going to do the multiples. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 would be 12. 5 would be 15. 6 would be 18. 7 would be 21. 8 would be 24. 9 would be 27. And 10 would be 30. All right, with 5, we got 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 4 is 20, 5 times 5 is 25, 30, 35, 40. So now when I look at these, I have either ending in a 0 or a 5. So here's 15. So 15 is the least common multiple. Now, for the 5, it's 5 times 3. So this would be times 3. And for the 3, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it would be times 5. Now, I want you to notice something here. Now, I found the least common multiple, and I know that here's, times 1, and here's times 2, and here's times 3. So these ones are times 1, these ones are times 2, and I could keep going here, and 5. And so that tells me what I need to do. So this would tell me that 3 has to multiply by 5, and 5 needs to multiply by 3, because that's where the 15 ended up. But the other thing you need to look at is this. Am I really just doing 5 times 3 and 3 times 5? It looks like I am. So sometimes, if you're not sure, you can just multiply the denominators by each other, and that will get you a common denominator. Now, sometimes it will be a huge math problem, but that works in a pinch too. So let's do the math here. 3 times 1 would be 3. 3 times 5 would be 15. So this is 3/15. 1 times 5 would be 5, and 3 times 5 would be 15. Okay, now that means that this one is larger. So the final answer would be 1/5 is less than 1/3. Okay, now most of us, we would look at this and we might think that 1/5 would be bigger because it has a 1 and a 5 in it, but it's not. When we get the denominators to be the same, it becomes clear because 5 is larger than 3. When the denominators are like, basically what we're doing is we're saying which one of these is bigger, 3 or 5? Well, 5 is bigger, so that means 5/15 is more than 3/15. Okay, so 1/5 is less than 1/3. So for this, let's do one more. Let's do number 2. On page 585, let's do number 2. So the numbers they gave us are 3/4 and 7/8. Now let's find the value. We got 4, and we got an 8. 4, 8. Here we have 8, so it's 8. Okay, so this is 4 times 2. So we're just going to multiply this by 2, this by 2. Always multiply the top and the bottom together. And 2 times 3 would be 6. 2 times 4 would be 8. Okay, so we have 6/8 and 7/8. And we know that 7 is larger. If I take my paper again, we know that 7 is greater than 6. So 7/8 is greater than 6/8. So now let's write down the original values, which would be 3/4 here, is less than 7/8. And that's the problem. And that's how you do it. You're going to complete problems 2 through 10 on page 585. And that's all you got to do. Let's go.